Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So we finally got some information on Season 2 for Diablo 4, and also we have the Campfire chat, which I'm going to be going over. I have a lot of notes, a whole bunch of notes on stuff, and we're going to be talking about as much as we can. The Campfire chat was like 2 hours, and I had to sift through a lot of information to get everything right. I made some mistakes on the live stream. I apologize for that, but hopefully I've got everything correct now. Going back over everything they said, like some sort of freaking college professor. Some of the stuff they went over is pretty complicated, like the item level stuff, and also yeah, we'll talk about that later. First, let's go over the season of the blood. Let's talk about the blood mechanics, and then we'll dive into the campfire. Hopefully, I'll have some chapters up on this when the video goes live. Stepping out from the shadows that once obscured them, the Dark Master's blood seekers swoop in to prey upon unsuspecting mortals. Their ravenous appetites have grown. The season of blood will soon ooze throughout Sanctuary on October 17th at 10 a.m. PDT. Dare to look Fang destruction in the face and send it back to hell to the new season journey questline, season event, deadly blood-driven enemies, battle pass, and more. Plus, the new Uber endgame bosses have arrived in Sanctuary to increase the variety of endgame activities in Diablo 4. These havoc-wreaking bosses are hard to topple, but can drop unique items and cosmetics found nowhere else. We're shedding light on all the grisly details. Read them on our comprehensive look at Season of Blood contents. So let's go over all of this. Season 1.20 goes live on October 17th. But according to what they said in the Campfire chat, look forward to seeing the patch notes on the 10th, apparently October 10th. After the end of the Campfire on October 10th, we will get access to the patch notes themselves. Turn back the Crimson Tides with Eris and a new quest. At first, they targeted the small hamlets, descending upon insignificant prey and tearing into their jugglers, a most grisly death to befall someone. But then their ambitions grew and they became sloppy and greedy. That's when the word of suspicious vampire activity met your ears, Wanderer. Magistrate Orin, the distraught leader of a town badly plagued by these bloodthirsty assailants, needs your help in investigating a recent slew of murders. Enter the Sanctuary's vampire-infested underbelly at a new quest line. Recruit the skillful vampire hunter Eris to your cause and discover the sinister plot of the Dark Master behind it all. Your monstrous adversaries are not typical demonic disturbances, require you to harness their vampiric powers with the aid of new pact armor. All of the vampiric powers seem to be placed in armor pieces, no amulets, no weapons. And on top of that, they do require that you power them up with the use of consumable items, which I'm sure we'll go over here. Apparently the Blood Money quest line is started by speaking to Orin. He sets you off at the beginning of everything. Siphon the blood of your foes using vampiric powers. So they've got some vampiric powers that they've showed us. You can basically harvest these potent bloods and vampiric powers to unlock specific effects. Apparently, you can have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vampiric powers, which go into the star. And those 5 vampiric powers are unlocked by having the activation costs fulfilled, essentially. These little things right here are the activation cost. There's also apparently consumables that are involved in leveling it up and a bunch of other things. This one in particular, as you can see, when you evade, you turn into a cloud of bats, becoming unstoppable for 3 seconds. Enemies along your path take 66 to 98 physical damage and are inflicted with a vampiric curse. The vampiric curse, from what I understand, as it was explained, is actually what kind of powers your abilities. So as you curse more and more monsters, stacking up to 8, which is what he said, allows you to steal 8 souls with the vampiric curse, which allow you to then release them in the vampiric ability. So you have to kind of like steal the souls of the enemies and then use them to power your effects according to how this works. Let's see here. Each power can be upgraded a maximum number of 3, level 3, and the 5 powers can be equipped to your character at a time. When you hover over the vampiric power, you'll notice it displays anywhere between 1 to 3 symbols. These are called packs and the number of their associated costs. This is where packed armor comes into play. So as you can see, the packed armor has specific symbols on it. So if you were to want this particular pact, you would need 2 of each one of the symbols. Like this armor has 1 of each, so you get 3 out of 5. It might be a little bit difficult to find some perfect pieces of equipment this season. There are 3 pack types in total, using the above image for reference from the left to the right. They are called Ferocity, Divinity, and Eternity. Keep your eyes peeled for chest, armor, pants, gloves, boots, and helms containing the packs that drop during the Season of Blood, because they are needed to activate your vampiric powers. Once you have both packed armor and vampiric powers equipped, you'll need to ensure that the armor you're wearing provides the packs that match the activation costs listed on the power. Let's use the legendary gloves as an example. They provide 1 of each. If you have a vampiric power that requires 1 ferocity to activate, then this item alone covers the requirement. You still have 1 divinity and 1 eternity available, so if you equip a second vampiric power that requires both divinity and eternity, then it boost will provide the packs enough to evoke both powers. Customize the packs to your armor's needs. You might not always have the armor with the right packs to activate the vampiric powers in your collection. The Dark Master Servants have devised 2 types of items to remedy the situation: standalone packs and cleansing acids. Standalone packs are used to add a specific pack type to an item of your choice. This can only be done if a maximum amount of pack type isn't already on that item. Cleansing acids are used to remove packs from an item. These crafting items can be pried from the clutches of blood seekers, as well as acquired from the Blood Harvest Season event, Season Journey, and Opulent Coffins, and through the new quest line. Use these tools to ensure you always have packed armor that matches your vampiric powers you'd like to use for your build. Bleed new blood into your build. Now that you've learned the vampiric powers and packed armor, let's take a look at 22 vampiric powers available in the Season of Blood. All classes can wield any vampiric power, and in doing so, they will sculpt your character into a vampire killing machine. Will you seek to diversify your collection of powers or concentrate your resources on maxing out a handful of them? The new Vampiric Curse keyword has been added to complement these terrifying powers. Look out for it as you read about each power. The Vampiric Curse, killing an enemy affected by your Vampire Curse, stores their soul, so I was talking about earlier. Casting a defensive, macabre, or agility skill will unleash stored souls to attack nearby enemies, and you can hold up to 8 souls. The below values reflect each vampiric power at their maximum level 3. Minor vampiric powers, 1 to 3 packs required. Anticipation, 1 divinity. Your ultimate skills gain 20% cooldown reduction. Your ultimate skills gain 12% increased damage for each nearby enemy affected by your damage over time effects. That's an interesting one for certain builds, like maybe Rain of Arrows on the Rogue. Coven's Fangs, 2 divinity. Your Conjuration, Companion, Minion, and Bat Familiar attacks deal 52% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Lucky Hit, your Conjuration, Companion, Minion, and Bat Familiar have a 30% chance to inflict the Vampiric Curse when hitting enemies. Domination, you deal 24% increased damage to enemies who are stunned, immobilized, frozen, or feared. If they also are injured and not an elite, they are instantly killed. Feed the Coven. Lucky Hit, Conjuration, Companion, Minion, Bat, Familiar attacks have a 60% chance to restore 10 primary resource to you and increase your damage by 10% for 4 seconds. Hectic, 3 divinity. For every 5 basic skills you cast, 1 of your active cooldowns is reduced by 2 seconds. Sounds like a fun one for a basic build. Especially since basic builds usually go with cooldowns. Hemomancy, your attacks deal 80% of your maximum life as physical damage to nearby enemies. This can only occur once every 4 seconds. You heal for 1% of your maximum life for each enemy damaged this way. Seems like a fun build to go around maximum life. I know some people like to do maximum life builds. Perhaps if you're doing the Barbarian Thorns build, could be an interesting combination there alongside the... because obviously he has the ability to give himself more thorns depending on his maximum life, and then you'd build up his maximum life to give him more thorns, which would also in turn give you more damage on this Hemomancy. It has some interesting options. Infection, hitting enemies with direct damage infects them with pox. Inflicting pox 8 times on an enemy expunges their infection, dealing 70% poison damage. Interesting. Jagged Spikes. Thorns have a 10% chance to deal 300% increased damage and chill enemies for 8%. Speaking of a Thorns option, so there's another one for the Thorns build. Prey on the Weak. You deal 16% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. Enemies are vulnerable while affected by a vampiric curse from your other vampiric powers. So this one would give anybody the ability to make an enemy vulnerable, which is a pretty powerful thing in Diablo 4. Because all you have to do is make sure that they're cursed, and if they're cursed, they're vulnerable, and if they're vulnerable, you get 16% increased damage to them, so that's not bad. Rampart. After not moving for 3 seconds, you gain a barrier for 40% of your maximum life for 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 20 seconds. Doesn't sound very useful because of how much you have to move in Diablo 4. You're always bouncing around, trying to avoid effects. Standing still for 3 seconds might not necessarily be the easiest thing in the world, but I guess if you could stand still for 3 seconds, that would be helpful. Ravenous, 3 ferocity, lucky hit up to a 20% chance to increase your attack speed by 40% for your total movement speed. Attack speed by 40% of your total movement speed for 6 seconds. That's actually kind of interesting. Makes for a very fast build. That could definitely be useful on a character that has high movement speed, just to give you additional attack speed. So you're attacking fast, you're moving fast. Kind of seems like a fun one. Almost like a frenzy barbarian. You gain 1% damage reduction for each 2% life you are missing. This is the kind of stuff, though, that doesn't work very well against one-shots. So if you got full health, well, then you get no damage reduction because it's 1% per 2% missing, right? So it's going to make you tankier the lower your HP gets. But the higher your HP is, the less tanky you are. It won't prevent you from getting one shot, but it might prevent you from getting killed when you're at low HP. Sanguine Brace. When you kill an enemy, fortify for 6% of your base life. While you have more fortify than your maximum life, you gain 8% critical strike chance. That's an interesting one. Fortify options. That's a fortify option for basically any class, including some classes that do not have access to fortify. So that's actually kind of interesting. When struck, you have a 14% chance to fear enemies and slow them by 80% for 2 seconds. You are guaranteed to critically strike enemies who are feared. Guaranteed crit on enemies that are feared. Sounds like you might put that together with what? Butcher's Pupil? Doesn't Butcher's Pupil fear enemies? And then you'd have guaranteed crits while your enemies are feared. That sounds kind of OP. Casting skills heal you for 3% life. Double this bonus while below 50%. Vampiric Major Powers. 6 packs required to activate these. Accursed Touch. Lucky hit up to a 44% chance to inflict Vampiric Curse on enemies. Enemies that with Vampiric Curse have a 15% chance to spread it to another surrounding enemy. Accursed Souls deal 200% increased damage. Yeah. Wow. Is that, am I reading that wrong, or does that seem like a negative, not a positive? Like, so a 44% lucky hit chance to curse the enemies. Enemies with the Vampiric Curse have a 15% chance to spread it to other enemies, and any accursed soul deals 200% increased damage? Or is that we deal 200% increased damage to that accursed soul? That seems like the other way around, the way that's worded. Bathe in blood. While channeling a skill, you form a pool of blood beneath you. While channeling in a skill in a pool, your channeled skills deal 40% increased damage, and you gain a 30% damage reduction. A pool can only form once every 8 seconds. Blood Boil. When your core skills overpower an enemy, you spawn 3 volatile blood drops. Collecting a volatile blood drop causes it to explode, dealing 60% physical damage around you every 20 seconds. Your next skill is guaranteed to overpower. It's kind of interesting. Call Familiar. Casting Mastery, Mastery Weapon, Weapon Mastery, Macabre, or Wraith skills, or Imbuement skills, calls a Bat ally to attack nearby enemies, dealing 80% physical damage and a 30% chance to stun. So you get a little Bat Pet. Flowing Veins, you deal 60% increased damage over time to enemies that are moving or affected by a vampiric curse. Metamorphosis, when you evade, you turn into a cloud of bats, becoming unstoppable for 4 seconds. Enemies along your path take 60% physical damage and are afflicted with a vampiric curse. And then Moonrise. Hitting an enemy with a basic skill grants you 4% attack speed for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Upon reaching maximum stacks, you enter Vampiric Blood Rage, gaining 160% basic skill damage and 15% movement speed for 10 seconds. Reap Hunter's Acclaim from the Blood Harvest Season event. Home to the highest chance for receiving Potent Blood and Pact Armor drops is the Blood Harvest Seasonal Event. So the Blood Harvest Seasonal Event seems like, I hate to say this, but it just seems like a reskinned Helltide. And even they were like, well, what's the difference between a Helltide and a Blood Harvest event? So they basically said that the Blood Harvest events are essentially always active. And they have the ability to drop special items, like they're talking about the Potent Bloods and the Pact Armors. And you get to keep those, obviously, when you leave. There are chests in the Blood Harvest events and things like that, so they are very similar to Helltides. With a wave of his hand, the Dark Master has dispatched cunning Bloodseekers with armies of vampires to conquer the Dry Steppes, Hawazar, Scotland, regions of Sanctuary, imprisoning its denizens and causing pandemonium. Putting enemies to the sword during bounties, bursting bloodbusters, completing world events, and disrupting vampiric rituals, and freeing prisoners will earn you some reputation. With reputation, you will climb the tiers containing useful rewards such as crafting materials, items, and packed consumables. Inside the Blood Harvest, you'll have a chance to acquire blood lures, which summon Bloodseekers for you to extinguish. You can also use any Seeker keys you find to free prisoners of the Dark Master's army, or Seeker's caches to receive Pact Armor, Pact Consumables, and Potent Bloods. There will also be new world events and dungeons where you can go toe-to-toe with more Bloodseekers and other vampire foot soldiers as well. The Dark Master's army calls some of the Sanctuary dungeons home. Delve into their dungeons to see what secret lies wait. Conquer the brutish endgame bosses. So this was interesting. They talked about in the Campfire. And basically there's some new bosses as well as some returning ones. Reinforcements from the darkest depths of burning hell take hold of Sanctuary, ushering in a new area of death and wanton destruction. This bath of uber difficulty endgame bosses are not for the faint of heart, but the chance to receive unique items and cosmetic items await those who muster the courage to stand against them. Each boss has a variety of unique items they can drop, with some of those being exclusively only to that boss. The same goes for the special cosmetic items they can potentially drop. You can test your hand at slaying these unsightly abominations in eternal or seasonal realms, starting in World Tier 3, with even more intense encounters awaiting for you in World Tier 4. These foes will only grant you an audience on their terms. Below is a list of bosses and requirements to encounter them. Grigore, the Galvanic Saint, World Tier 3 and 4, you must gather enough living steel from the tortured offerings in Helltide. In addition to unique items that can only drop from Grigore, you also have a chance to receive the Demon Binder Mount Armor cosmetic. Echo of Varshan, World Tier 3 and 4, defeat grotesque debtors during the Whispers of the Dead for a chance to receive parts of Varshan's body. The Tree of Whispers collections, gained from turning in Grim Favors, guarantees a part of Varshan's body. Once you have enough parts, including the Malignant Heart, if you're playing on World Tier 4, you can summon Varshan. The Flesh Weld Rod trophy has a chance to drop from this boss, in addition to unique items that can only drop from Varshan. Interesting. The Beast in the Ice, World Tier 4, gather Distilled Fear while completing Tier 30 or higher Nightmare dungeons. After you have enough, visit the Occultist and craft the Glacial Fissure Nightmare Sigil. Activate it, and then you can fight the Beast in the Ice. The Skull and Torch Fell Steel Mount trophies can be potentially dropped from this boss, in addition to unique items exclusive to it. The Dark Master, World Tier 4, defeat a world boss on World Tier 4 or complete a Legion event. From these activities, you'll acquire the Exquisite Blood. Once you have enough, you'll be able to summon the Dark Master. The Diadem of the Ancient Helm cosmetic can potentially drop from this boss in addition to unique items exclusive to it. Echo of Duriel, which is the freaking Maggot King. Defeat both Grigore and the Galvanic Saint and Varshan in World Tier 4 to collect Mucus Slick Eggs and Shards of Agony. Once you have enough, you'll be able to summon the Lord of Pain, Duriel, out of this group of bosses. Duriel is the only one who has a chance to drop uber unique items. The Smoldering Brimstone Mount can potentially drop from this boss. Keep in mind that you'll need to meet the summoning conditions of the boss each time that you fight it, so hold on to any summoning materials that you might acquire during your travels. Let's see here. Earn rewards with the Season Journey and the Battle Pass. So they do have new, obviously, objectives that you can obtain. Last time they had some caches and some various things that you could obtain. This time, of course, they have new ones. As you hunt down Zir's acolytes and areas unlock the secrets of your newfound vampiric powers, you'll receive earned rewards from the Season Journey and Battle Pass. The Season Journey is broken into chapters And as you complete each chapter, you earn the rewards for that chapter. There will be legendary aspects, the Salmon Gundy mount, strips, points, mount armor, and 3 scrolls of amnesia, which provide a free skill tree and Paragon board reset. The journey also provides favor, the resource to climb the battle pass tiers, which can be earned naturally through playing aspects of the game. The Season of Blood pass begins October 17th, 10 a.m. PDT, and hosts 90 tiers, 27 free tiers, and 63 premium tiers. If you get the premium battle pass, not only will the rewards free tiers be unlocked, but you also get all of the other tiers as well. Urn of Blood. They got new blessings. So I'm pretty sure that the original blessings that we got before are there, but we also have the Urn of Blood, boost the hunter's acclaim you earn from blood harvest activities. Urn of Helltides, boost the chance to receive extra equipment item from Helltide chests. The extra item will be of legendary rarity or better. Urn of Swift Travel, boost how quickly your mount recovers from sprinting. The bonuses gained from season blessings only last till the end of the season, of course. There's also going to be some new cosmetic stuff in the cosmetic shop. And Seasons of Senior Item Stash. With the Season of Malignant coming to an end, we want to ensure your hard-earned gear transfers to the Eternal Realm with you. Once the Season of Malignant ends, all seasonal characters will be transferred to the Eternal Realm, and all items in that character's Season of the Malignant stash will go into a new withdraw-only stash in the Eternal Realm. You have all of the Season of Blood to withdraw any items you would like to keep from the Season of the Malignant. Any items left in the withdraw-only stash tab, and once Season of Blood ends, will be unrecoverable. Claim the Umber Wing set, Darkness Cosmetic sets. One of the Hell's Gift will be returning to either the Ether soon. If you purchased any digital edition of Diablo IV prior to October 17th, and you have until March 31st, 2024 to redeem your Umber Winged Darkness Cosmetic set for Diablo Immortal. Apparently DLSS 3 is going to be active for Season 2. That'll be interesting to see. And that's pretty much it for that. That covered a lot of what I was going to cover in the other stuff, but let's still go over my notes anyway. So we have the 5 returning bosses. We already talked about that. The Echoes of Arshan, the Beast in the Ice, the Lord Zir, Grigori, Galactic Saint, and of course, Duriel, King of Maggots. They did say specifically in the Campfire that Duriel will drop 920 item power items specifically, so when you kill him, you will get 920 item power items. He has a higher chance to drop uber unique items than normal, and he is apparently easier than Uber Lilith, but you will need high poison resistance, apparently. Gems no longer drop at all, essentially. What they basically said is that shards will drop instead of gems, and that the gems will be craftable from the shards. So you will not be able to find gems anymore. Instead, you find the shards, and then the shards are crafted into the gems. The gems still go into your inventory, though. It's just you no longer find gems. So you're just going to put your gems in your stash. Maybe even just craft the ones that you need and not even keep any of them except for the shards, because the shards don't take up any space, but the gems will. Town portal cosmetics in the battle pass, they talked about those, just changing the color of your portal. It looked kind of cool. Already went over all the vampiric powers, the new monsters. They have a lot of new monsters. They said they have some new attacks, but mostly they just look like reskin versions of the ones that we already have. And that's pretty much all there is for that. They did say that there were specifically some monsters called Bloodseekers, and the Bloodseekers are basically humans that have been infected with the vampiric curse and fallen under Zir's control. And these are actually player classes, so they are rogues, druids, barbarians, necromancers, sorceresses, and they have the ability to drop potent bloods. And so they said that the fights are interesting because they are actually player classes. So it's kind of like PvP, but not PvP. Because you actually get to fight actual players and with player abilities, so to speak. So it should be kind of interesting to do that. The Blood Harvest, like I said, just kind of seems to be like a reskinned Helltide. In fact, they even said that during the thing. They were like, well, what's the difference between a Helltide and a Blood Harvest, right? Well, they did say that there's always at least one active one at any given time, so they don't like come on and then go off like Helltides do. So, there's not always a Helltide active, but there will apparently always be a Blood Harvest active. They also said that there is a big difference between these and Helltides, is that Helltides can only be done after you complete the like certain tiers and levels and things. Like, they're not really always active, but apparently the Blood Harvests are available from level 1 from what they said. So interesting. Scrolls of Escape DC protection, it will be in place now in Season 2. So if you're a hardcore character and you DC, it will eat up one of your scrolls. It will consume the scroll, but save your life, essentially. Incense now continues after death. Small change. 10 more waypoints will be unlocked at the start of the season. They didn't say specifically which waypoints those are, but they did say 10 more waypoints would be unlocked at the start of a season. Renown wards will now persist between seasons and new characters. So if you've already completed the Renown, you get the rewards on your next character and you don't have to do it again. It seems like they're kind of like completely taking Renown away because, I mean, I'm not saying that I want to do Renown every single time I grind my character, but I also kind of like don't see the point in even having Renown if you're just going to give us all the rewards for free, basically. I don't know. Maybe it's just they don't know exactly what they want to do with it, and it seems to be showing in how they're handling the Renown system. Overworld monsters are now equal in level to the player's level. After 55 in World Tier 3. So I actually got this wrong on the live stream. Let me just humble myself real quick. I originally had thought that they had changed the cap to 55 and 75, which I was wrong. Basically, in a previous patch, they reduced the level of all the monsters basically by 5, which was very strange, so that the monsters were never the same level as you. And this is just a really complicated way of saying that the overworld monsters are going to be the same level as you now. They really didn't have to put it this way because it's silly. So after 55 in World Tier 3, the monsters will be the same level as you. And after 75 in World Tier 4, they're going to be the same level as you. That's basically what they were saying, and I got it completely wrong. 2 more character slots, apparently, so that you have a little bit more character slots to mess around with. Town changes. They talked a lot about town changes, moving around NPCs. They talked about adding stashes into a lot of the smaller towns, putting in a cultist by the Tree of Whispers, moving the Purveyors of Curiosities closer to the waypoints. A lot of the towns, I think a lot of us felt like they were very badly laid out, and so it seems like they're doing a little bit of work to kind of move things around, make some of the towns, the other towns, more useful. The Whisper town more useful with an occultist there. Some of the smaller towns more useful with freaking with an actual stash and so forth and so on. They talked a lot about mounts. Mounts are more responsive, faster, 14% faster, able to break through barricades while sprinting. I forgot to type while sprinting. Turn better and lowered the cooldowns across the board. So like when you get knocked off or you dismount, like when you used to just like dismount normally, it would be like 10 seconds before you can get back on. Now it's 3, and so forth and so on. So that the cooldown for the mount has been drastically reduced. Ability to teleport directly to the Nightmare Dungeon entrance. I'm a little bit on the fence on this one. Like I can see why some people be excited about this, but I also feel like it just means the overworld is even less important now than it was before. Because now you're definitely not going to see the overworld if you're doing Nightmare Dungeons. You're just going to teleport right to the dungeon, teleport out, teleport right to the dungeon, teleport out. It almost feels like they're ashamed of the open world, the overworld. Kind of feels like they're ashamed of the overworld. Events have higher monster density. They're talking specifically about the events, both inside and outside of dungeons, apparently. So, like, when you're inside of a dungeon and you spawn, like, Altar of Bishibosh, the density on that event will be greater. Same thing when you're outside the dungeons. Apparently the event monster density is going to be increased. And NPCs that are supposed to be, saved by you within those events, apparently they're no longer going to get one shot. They've significantly increased their defenses, so they're a little bit easier to keep alive. If you have played around with any of this stuff, you will know exactly what I'm talking about, because they literally get one shot like all the time. Traps and CC readability / frequency has been reduced greatly. They specifically showcased with the traps that there would be like almost like a little effect on the ground to show you where the trap is going to fire, and you have a certain period of time to evade the trap, so it's more obvious where the trap is actually going to hit and where you need to avoid, as well as crowd control effects apparently reduced greatly. Paragonglyph Exp has been increased. Not really sure how I feel about this one, because usually I would max out all my glyphs well before I hit level 100. And then once I hit level 100, well, I didn't have anything to do because all my glyphs were leveled out. It was pretty much just farm for gear at that point because your glyphs are all maxed and your gear is pretty good. And so you're looking for like minor upgrades. Faster glyph leveling means that you're going to cap out your glyphs well before you hit level 100. Because if you could already do it before you hit 100, you're definitely going to do it a hell of a lot faster now. Which kind of leaves Nightmare Dungeons as like, why am I doing the Nightmare Dungeons, right? Well, they did also talk about another thing with Nightmare Dungeons, which is basically where the higher level of the Nightmare Dungeon, the better the item level, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Backstabber buff is no longer on the monster. It is now a player debuff, and it scales with the world tier. So it's like a vulnerability is what they called it. So it applies a vulnerability to the player. And basically what this means is that instead of the monster just getting a 200% damage buff to you, if you turn around against a backstabber monster, you get immediately backstabbed, and then vulnerability is applied to you based on what world tier you're in, which of course increases any subsequent damage that you would take. I'm not entirely sure this is the best of changes because vulnerability can sometimes be more nasty than the backstabber. Because of course, at least with the backstabber, yes, you know, if you get hit in the back, it would hurt really bad. And sometimes it could one-shot you, so that's a good thing. You're no longer getting one-shot. But also now you're vulnerable and you're taking a lot more damage. But it's not just the backstabber, the person who backstabbed you, that's doing the damage. Now everybody's doing more damage to you for a certain period of time, which could be potentially very dangerous. Of course, getting made vulnerable is something that you can deal with by simply running away until you're no longer vulnerable. So that's also a thing. Monster crit resistance has been changed from a monster buff to a player debuff, so it applies to the player and stacks for 3 seconds up to a maximum. So if you evade it for 3 seconds, it goes away. Death Pulse no longer works on monsters that already have an innate explosion. That's a really good change in my opinion, and it also no longer stacks on top of other death pulses. So you know that thing that would happen when you when you're like using your Raiment of the Infinite, for instance, and you suck in all the monsters, and then you kill them all at once, and then there's like 50 death explosions in the same spot, and then if you don't get out of it in time, like the 50 death explosions would just one-shot you because 50 death explosions is a lot. Well, apparently they no longer have the ability to stack on top of each other, which means that you won't get one shot by 50 death pulses after you kill a pack of monsters. I'm not exactly sure how it will work, but they're saying that they won't stack. I don't know if that means that like all 50 death pulses will still go off and they'll just be like randomly assigned around the room or something, or if it only just does one and that's it, but I guess we'll see. Lightning Storm will not activate if it is stuck on something. So if there's no direct line of sight between you and the Lightning Storm, like if it's stuck on a ladder or something, it won't activate. It will only start in combat instead of out of combat, so it's not going to be as bad anymore. You don't have to constantly jump in the bubble the entire time while you're trying to like walk to the next monster pack, which is nice. Gives 35% movement speed bonus when completing the mechanics correctly, so that it's not slowing you down ridiculously. So, because, if you have to run back, stand in it, sit there, wait for it to go off, they give you a 35% movement speed bonus, so you can basically get back to where you were before you ran back to go into the jank. Drifting Shade got some significant debuffs as well. Duration was decreased from 5 to 3 seconds, and the respawn time was increased by 2 seconds, which will make it less frequent, and it will last for less time, which hopefully will make that less evil. But I'm going to be honest, the Drifting Shade is one of my most hated dojanks. Completely removed objectives from a handful of dungeons. Just find the boss. Apparently some of the dungeons you will not have to do basically anything in, but only some of them, not all of them. So they said handful of dungeons, so some of them will still have objectives that you have to complete. They also placed the objectives more on the critical path and less in like dead ends that are on the end of things. So as you walk around like the circle, like all the objectives will just be kind of like in your way, so to speak, so you can't miss them. Legion events are reduced from 30 minutes to 25-minute intervals, and the warning time was increased to 10 minutes. World bosses reduced from 6 hours to 3.5, and they're given a 15-minute warning on world boss spawns. Fixed nightmare sigils from whispering caches. So if you got whispering cache nightmare sigils before, you may have noticed that they drop like really low level. Well, they're going to be +5, -5 of your highest level completed in nightmare dungeons. So if you've completed, say, level, I don't know, 70, then they're going to be 65 to 80, or 65 to 75, right? Whisper caches gold greatly increased, and they kind of like really emphasize this. Apparently, the gold from whispering caches way up. They really tried to hammer it home. I don't know how much way up is, but they seem to be really excited about it. EXP from Whisper / Helltides increased substantially. Whisper caches will now properly drop the item associated with the cache required. So if you get the boot cache, it will actually drop boots and not a sword. Helltide chests show their specific icon on the map, which is a really great change, so you don't have to hover over each chest to figure out which one's which. New favorite tag, so you don't accidentally delete or sell or salvage items. So like in the game, you could mark something as junk. That was already in there, but now you can also mark an item as a favorite item, which will prevent you from being able to sell it and prevent you from being able to salvage it unless you unmark it as a favorite. Extracted aspects now grouped together by affixes. Why is that a C? Affix type, and it could be kind of interesting for actually looking through your affixes, so they're actually all kind of in the right place. Dungeons will now correctly display the dungeon aspect that you would acquire, even if another event is active on that dungeon. So basically, like, when you hold your mouse over a dungeon to see what aspect is in that dungeon, sometimes if there was an event there, like a whispering quest or something, it would prevent you from being able to see what the aspect was because of some of the quests tied to the dungeon. So that's been fixed. Search function. They added a search function where you can type. That was expected. But what they also did was they added filters, which are absolutely amazing, for weapon, armor, jewelry, potion, sigil, shield, magic, and rare, legendary, unique, sacred, and ancestral. You can basically just filter out everything. So like say, for instance, you wanted to find unique gloves. You could do armor, unique, and then you could also do ancestral, and it would filter out everything that's not an armor, unique, or ancestral, right? Or you could do like weapon, sacred, and then do like legendary, and it would only show you the weapons that are sacred legendaries. It's a lot more useful than I thought it was going to be, and I was actually pretty surprised with this in general, and it looks really good. Ability to hide. Why does that say high? Hide, vulnerable, dodge, fortified, text spam. So if you guys had the horrible freaking like dodge, vulnerable, fortified text spam after you hid your combat text and you absolutely hated it, they did finally make it so that you can hide the vulnerable, dodge, and fortified text spam. Auto run has been added as a feature. Interesting. Streamer mode has been added. Hide your name and stuff so that people can't find you as easily. Enchantment costs increased for first enchant. So when you're trying to change the effect on an item, what they did was they increased the cost of enchantment for the base enchant. So for the first enchant, then they decreased all the subsequent costs and made it so there were less spikes of cost. So it's not going to go from like 20k to like $1 million on like your first enchant, but it might start out at like 200k and then go to like 250 and then like 300. We don't know exactly what it is, but the way they explained it is a higher initial enchantment and much less on each subsequent increase to make enchantment more cost effective. Sacred rares, blues, and normals no longer drop in World Tier 4. Instead, they drop as crafting mats. Normal items no longer drop in World Tier 3. Instead, they drop as crafting mats. So, for instance, if I'm in World Tier 4 and a sacred rare drops, the sacred rare will automatically convert into crafting mats. If I am in World Tier 3 and a normal item drops, like a normal rare, then the normal rare will turn into crafting mats. Apparently, they're basically making it so that sacred items can no longer drop in World Tier 4 unless they are legendary or uniques. Apparently, legendary and uniques can still drop, but the rares, blues, and like white items cannot in the appropriate area. So in World Tier 4, you will never see white, blue, or rare normal items or sacred items, only ancestrals. In World Tier 3, you will never see ancestrals because they don't drop there, and you'll also never see normal white rares or blues that are non-sacred. So they have to be at least sacred, and in World Tier 4, they have to be at least ancestral. However, the legendary items, they said, will still fall, and the unique items will still fall. Higher level monster drops, this one was a little bit confusing to me, and it did take me a little bit to figure it out. Basically, how this works is at level 75, and I had to go over this several times to figure this out, so follow along with me. Okay, at level 75, the items will be increasing in item power by 2 per level up to level 100. Okay, he said at level 100 the items will be item power 920. Okay, so if your character is level 100, then the maximum item power that you will be able to obtain is 920. However, past 100, the maximum will no longer rise because, of course, 920 is the maximum, but the minimum range will rise for +1 per level up to a maximum of 920, which is basically where the item level minimum and the item level maximum are going to be the same. So what that means is that if you get high enough level monsters, and he basically said level 155 plus monsters is where this happens. That's what he said. That's what Joe Piaporo said on the stream, was that at level 155 plus, you will get 920 minimum and 920 maximum. So the items that will fall past a certain point are guaranteed to be the highest level that you can possibly get. But, for instance, at level 100, even though level 100 is capable of 920 item power, the minimum item power is not 920, which means that there's a range. For all we know, that range could be 725 to 920. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But there's going to be a range there. And so what he's saying is that the higher level the monster is, the closer the range is, and eventually it will reach the point where the two are essentially the same, and all the items will be 920. Affixes apparently are not changed in this, so the affixes are not going up with the item power, and there's no word on any new breakpoint for the item power information. They didn't say anything about that. More weapon damage, armor, and resistances. They specifically said that when the item power goes up, you're going to see higher weapon damage, you're going to see higher armor values, and you're going to see higher resistances, which is the main things that apparently we're going to be looking for. Whispering caches are plus 10 item power of your character's level. Upgraded caches are 20 plus item power of your character level. So for instance, in this particular case, notice he said that level 100 equals 920 item power. So if you're lower than level 100, then it might bump that up to 920. But if you're at level 100, it's not going to increase it past level 120 because 920 is the cap in Season 2. But if you were level 75, which is like the bare minimum to hit, like, you know, where they start to go up in item level, which I don't know the exact scaling of this, so do forgive me. If you're level 75, you will see a significant bump here because you get a increase in item power from the items that are coming from these caches. Helltide caches are increased by 20 plus of the item power of your sea level. So whatever your sea level dictates, I mean, let's just use a number here. Let's just pretend that level 90 equals 870 item power, just as a example. Then that means that it would be plus 20 of that, which is 870, 880, 890. So it would be an 890 item, so to speak. You get a kind of a gist of how it would work. So basically, you're just going to get higher item power stuff from the Helltide and the upgraded Whispering caches than you would normally get from, say, killing a regular monster in the overworld. Patch notes available on October 10th, they said, by the way, after the campfire. So there will be a campfire on October the 10th, and they're going to put the patch notes out on that day. Adam is apparently coming back on October 10th, so we might have a little bit of humor back in the campfires. Smoldering Ashes will unlock automatically now, which is something that I ran into. I was forgetting to go in there and activate them, and then I wasn't using the season powers because I didn't know I had any Smoldering Ashes, and I had to like scroll through the list and find which ones I had unlocked, right? Apparently, they will also unlock at earlier levels now because they felt like they were spaced a little bit too far apart and kind of like too far into the higher brackets. Diablo 4 is coming to the Steam, but apparently it has Steam Deck support, but apparently it doesn't really support like the copies that you already own. So if you've already bought the game on Xbox, or you already bought the game on Blizzard, or if you already bought the game on your, your PlayStation, apparently it doesn't transfer over to the Steam copy. So if you want to play it on Steam, apparently you've got to buy it again, which is a little odd. But apparently, though, they said it will come with Steam Deck support, which might make it an interesting choice for those of you who are using Steam Decks. I know I have one. Leaderboard apparently is not coming until Season 3. And that's about all I have. I really don't want to make this last for too long. I mean, the campfire was like 2 hours, and then I already went over this as well. It looks like they have a lot of good changes. I'm a little bit pensive about some of the changes, but it does look like they've done a lot of work on the game. I can't really speak for the powers yet because I kind of have to see how they work in the game. And there are some of these features, especially some of the ones I went over in here, which I kind of would like to see exactly how they work. I also have a lot to say about some of this stuff, like how hard is Duriel. Uber Lilith is cheesable, but she's not exactly the easiest to fight if you just want to do it the legitimate way, like actually fight her mechanic for mechanic. And so I'm a little bit worried that Duriel might be the same way. Cheesy, fight him the cheesy method, or don't do it at all. Like, that kind of a thing. I'm also a little bit concerned about the farming thing, where you have to farm each one of the bosses, gain the right to fight Duriel, and then once you fight Duriel, you lose all your mats if you fail. If Duriel is as hard as Lilith, can you imagine having to farm, tons and tons of mats to try and figure out how to fight Duriel, and every single time you fail? It's hard enough with Lilith trying to learn her fight. Like I said, unless you cheese her, but like actually learning her mechanics and going through the fight step by step, you die a lot. That's just kind of how it works. Either that or just watch somebody's YouTube video on the mechanics. But it does make it a little bit more difficult to get to Duriel, of course, and then obviously if you fail, well, then you got to go back and farm all your Dujanks again. And apparently it's not just like one thing. Like you got to farm the items to fight Varshan. You got to farm the items to fight the Beast in the Ice. You got to farm the items to fight the Grigori, the Galvanic Saint. And then once you kill those, you get the items to fight Duriel, and so forth and so on. So it's a whole chain of events that you've got to do to get access to each one of the things. You've got to do the Whispers and the Helltide events to get access to these bosses. And then once you get access to these bosses, then you can get access to Duriel. And, it's like 1, 2, 3 chain events to get to Duriel. Another thing I wanted to talk about was the... where is it? The world boss changes. The world they increased the frequency of the world boss, and like I'm not exactly against this, but I really wish they'd make the world bosses more difficult, not just because as of right now, like people can kill the world bosses in like 30 seconds. It would be nice if the world bosses were more difficult and not just more common. I do like the warnings though, so you actually know that they're coming. The warning timers. A lot of the changes are definitely for the better. I definitely will say that across the board they've made a lot of changes. There's still a lot more that they can do. Have they done enough to earn your right to come back to the game? I really don't know. I'm still apprehensive myself, to be perfectly honest, because, yeah. I feel like the game just needs more time to mature. I'm not exactly against Diablo 4, and I don't hate the game. It really feels like an immature game, as in not talking like kids. What I mean is that the game itself just needs more time to find its footing, to build itself up, to do what it needs to do. It's like the difference between like an 18-year-old guy and like the 30-year-old version of himself. He's still the same guy, but he's maybe a little bit nicer, a little bit more patient, a little bit, etc. It's just an analogy. But Diablo 4 definitely needs a little bit of time to mature, and I think once it's matured, it will probably be a lot better than it was in season 1. Tune in on October 10th, of course, because we will have the second campfire, and they're going to be going over a lot in the second campfire. Let me go over really quickly what they are going over in the second campfire. There was a post by Hez about this. So looking forward to the 10th, they are going to be going over class updates, a deep dive into the damage bucket changes, vulnerable, crit, and overpower. They're also going to be talking about the resistances, because they are finally fixing the resistances in Season 2. A discussion about the unique item changes that they're going to be doing going forward. And they have some more. Also, Adam's going to be back on the 10th, and we're going to get patch notes on the 10th, but I already talked about that. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and keep watching.